As Donald becomes more unhinged and authoritarian, and the Trump regime continues to commit acts that are both illegal and unconstitutional, the resistance movement is growing louder and stronger. Currently at the forefront in the fight against the Trump regime, young women across the country. A Georgia teenager who was wrongly detained by ICE in an immigration facility is now speaking out against the regime's disgusting and unconscionable treatment of immigrants. Take a look.
I know everything that I'm going through is something that's very unjust, and it's not only my case, but millions of people are going through this in the United States. And Stewart, I met a lot of people that are going through tougher situations than me, and I think they deserve justice because they are not criminals like Dustin and his partner also mentioned. A lot of us are being treated as criminals, and Stewart, we're treated like we're the worst criminals ever, but we are not criminals. That place is made for us to be detained as we fix our legal status in the United States. Instead, we're treated like criminals, and they just pressure us into signing deportation or self-departure because they pressure us, and we don't get any information on our case unless you have an attorney.
Jimena Arias Cristobal further details how she was treated as inhumanely as a violent criminal and claims that this event has changed her life. She said, quote, "It kind of flips your world. Before we lived in fear, now a lot more," unquote. And women are speaking out with strength regardless of the repercussions. A woman in Alabama was recently fired for speaking out against Afrikaner resettlement, but she's not backing down. Yasmin Othman spoke out against Donald's bringing in white pro-apartheid South Africans, telling AL Media, quote, "I feel like it's disrespectful to the refugees that we are assisting and helping that are running from violence and forced displacement to be helping this population," unquote. Despite being fired, Yasmin is standing behind her statement saying, quote, "I would definitely do it again," unquote. And she's right. It is completely not just disrespectful, but mind-blowingly cruel to deny refuge to those seeking to flee repressive, violent governments or sickness and death, and instead allowing in a bunch of rich, entitled racists who will no doubt find a very happy home here as long as Donald and the Trump regime are in power. Women are also standing up across the country to run against Donald's MAGA congressman. Annie Andrews, who's awesome, by the way, is out of South Carolina, and she's gearing up to take on Lindsey Graham, which will be really fun for us, I think. Take a look at her new campaign ad.
My name is Dr. Annie Andrews, and for almost 2 decades, I've been a pediatrician in South Carolina. Parents trust me to treat their kids for just about everything you can imagine. This is an X-ray of a kid with measles pneumonia, a condition easily prevented by vaccines. This is a kid with cancer, one of the diseases the NIH doesn't have the funding to study anymore. And this is a kid who's been shot, which, despite being the #1 cause of death for children in America, is no longer classified as a public health crisis. And this kid, and there's really no other way to say this, is quite literally full of shit. And this is an adult who is also completely and unequivocally full of shit. Right now, Lindsey Graham is counting on all of us to stay quiet. And that means one thing. It's time to get loud. I'm Dr. Annie Andrews, and I hope you'll join me.
I'm thrilled that Dr. Andrews is throwing her hat in the ring here. I urge you to check out not just her campaign materials, but she's been making funny, cutting-edge videos for a while now, and she really needs to win. So, hey, South Carolina, get your act together. It is so important, especially now, for women to be standing up, speaking out, and running against those who want Donald to stay in power and continue to carry out his most despicable policies. Women can beat him. I know we can. So the more of us trying, the better. Now, while women continue the fight against Donald, universities are continuing to stand up as well. Harvard's president, Ellen Garber, who's been firmly standing up against Donald's attack on higher education, gave a commencement speech this week in which he took a subtle but quite direct hit at Donald. Take a look.
Welcome. Members of the class of 2025 from down the street, across the country, and around the world. Around the world, just as it should be.
That's right, around the world, as it should be. The point is clear there. Harvard, just like pretty much any other institution of higher learning in this country, values its international students and should refuse to bow down to Donald's insistence that international students no longer be allowed to study here. That would be tragic, both for the institutions of higher learning and America's standing as being at the cutting edge of research and development. Students, as you saw, gave a loud standing ovation, showing Harvard's unity against Donald's depredations upon their school, especially when it comes to the Trump regime's attempts to illegally deport students who are here on valid visas. It wasn't just Harvard's commencement that gave pushback against Donald. 60 Minutes correspondent Scott Pelley delivered a commencement speech to Wake Forest University graduates. Unlike the, quite frankly, obscene and offensive graduation speeches Donald's been giving recently, this one was quite clear, brave and powerful in its message, and it kind of went viral on social media. The Hill had this to say.
CBS News journalist Scott Pelley is going viral for apparently taking some shots at President Trump.
Pelley gave a speech during Wake Forest University's commencement ceremony. Here he is taking some not-so-subtle shots at President Trump and his administration.
In this moment, this morning, our sacred rule of law is under attack. Journalism is under attack. Universities are under attack. Freedom of speech is under attack, and insidious fear is reaching through our schools, our businesses, our homes.
The speech sent a shockwave through the GOP, and Fox anchors got a little defensive, truth hurts, right guys, during the broadcast, and said that Pelley should be arrested, despite the fact that he was just exercising his right to free speech, which last I checked is still enshrined in the United States Constitution. But, you know, what do I know? People with actual functioning brains, and those of us who don't believe in fascism, commended Pelley for continuing to call out the Trump regime's attacks on journalism and specifically Donald's. This has been going on for over a decade now. And it is long past time that people like Scott Pelley stand up and push back. And the fact that other journalists and much more importantly, other media outlets, other news organizations don't have these individuals' backs is just a sign of how far we've fallen here. So I would like to think at this point that journalists should no longer have to stand alone. So hopefully they themselves will band together and stop allowing the dangerous incursions on free speech to continue. Now, it's clear that Donald is emboldening the likes of Nazis, not just in Kansas City, but pretty much everywhere in this country, but also in Kansas City. And it's not just higher education that's pushing back on the horrific viewpoints espoused by Nazis in America. Over Memorial Day weekend, a white supremacist group descended upon a World War I museum in Kansas City while they sought to amplify their hateful ideology. What they got instead was a quite epic smackdown from a moving company. Here's KCTV with more.
Rental company U-Haul has banned members of a known white supremacy group, Patriot Front, from doing business with them following a weekend march here in Kansas City. In a statement, U-Haul says members misused their equipment when they transported members in the cargo area of one of the vehicles. Their statement goes on to say, and quoting here, they no longer have rental privileges. Of course, we do not support this group and what they represent. We have no desire to be affiliated with them in any way.
Go U-Haul. Of course, these Nazis can only make their views known publicly while wearing masks. So, maybe not so brave after all. It is not just U-Haul that's calling out Nazis for their despicable views. Attendees of the punk rock bowling fest were not having it at all when a man showed up wearing Nazi propaganda. Now, that is what we call punk rock. Those of us who grew up actually knowing what it is. So the shame and humiliation that guy felt is exactly what every Nazi should feel every minute of every day in perpetuity. So when you have U-Haul calling out Nazis, their disgusting behavior and wanting to dissociate themselves from those horrific ideologies, it sort of reminds us how black and white this issue is. This is not something that we can both sides here. There is no form of fascism that is acceptable in America. And just because fascism is now espoused by the federal government doesn't make it okay and doesn't make any aspect of it acceptable. The only way to push back against fascism in America or anywhere else for that matter is wholeheartedly, without reservation and without any kind of capitulation or appeasement or accommodation. Shouldn't be that friggin' hard. Lately, even normally unbiased, so-called unbiased sources have been forced to call out Donald's extremism, including more and more reporters and news sources. NPR is hitting back with a lawsuit of its own, calling Donald's executive order to end their federal funding, quote unquote, textbook retaliation for accurately reporting on him. They're joined by 3 Colorado public radio stations, which receive anywhere between $210,000 and $1.4 million in federal funding per year. Next 9 News reports that these smaller stations are ready to fight.
The attorney representing the 3 Colorado radio stations told me today on the phone that the 3 chosen really represent the landscape of public media across the country, with one serving tribal communities, another in rural Colorado, and the third for a more urban audience.
That's what jumped out to me when I saw it this morning, Angelina. I was like, geez, I wonder why Colorado is the test case for this. But when you talk about the diversity of communities served by public media, from tribal lands in southwest Colorado to very well-off community in Aspen to the entire Front Range with CPR, it really does show the breadth.
Yeah, I think it's a nice flavor, right? And so they kind of represent what people listen to across the country, and you have a little bit of this and a little bit of that. And so, really it's a test case, because if these local affiliates can stand alone, then there's a case, right, for all the others to follow.
The suit says that while some government strikes on free speech are subtle, Donald's assault on public media outlets is blatant. It says, quote, "This wolf comes as a wolf," unquote, which is directly from Supreme Court Justice Antonin Scalia, who was himself, in many, many ways, far-right extremists who laid the ground for the world we're currently living in. Noticeably missing from the case, I should say, is PBS. Station representatives say they're considering their own legal approach, and I hope they do, because the assaults on public radio, NPR, PBS, etc., are retaliatory and unconstitutional, and we need these stations to stand up for themselves and hope that they band together. These kinds of actions, particularly the one that NPR is taking right now, should make massive corporations like Paramount hang their heads in shame. My fear, however, is that the people running such massive corporations don't have any shame, because all they care about is their bottom line. And free speech in America seems not at all to be on their list of priorities. Now, we are going to continue to highlight every Friday all of the resistance movements going on in this country, small and large, because the only way we get through this together is to keep pushing back, keep opposing, keep resisting. So I will see you next week, and let's all each do our part every single day and get our country back.